I hope everybody can see my screen, right? Uh, yeah, okay. So I believe that so everybody is aware of the Hadoop and big data, and myself, Madhu, and so my I have some 5+ IT years, 5+ years of IT experience, out of which 3+ years of experience on the Hadoop administration. So primarily, I'm working on the Hortonworks Hadoop distribution with knowledge on the Cloudera Hadoop distribution as well. So I'm a Hortonworks Hadoop certified administrator, and so I'm currently handling all this Hadoop administration training as well. So before we just move into the next slide, so I want to make sure that, so is everybody aware of the Hadoop and big data? Or so can you understand what's the difference between the big data and Hadoop? Samba, do you understand it?
Madhu.
Are you aware of that? Hello? Hello?
Madhu.
Yeah, so do you aware of the difference between the big data and Hadoop?
Yeah, Madhu.
Okay, so can you tell me, so what is the difference? Okay. So just let me explain the difference between the big data and Hadoop. So basically, big data is a kind of problem. So nowadays we are getting the huge volumes of the data from variety of the sources. So I can call these huge volumes of the data as a big data. So big data is nothing but the problem, and Hadoop is a solution which has been designed to solve the issues that come up with the big data. So big data is a problem and Hadoop is a solution. And Hadoop is not a kind of any, it's not even kind of any what we think. Some people think of it as an RDBMS and some people think of it as a kind of hardware. So Hadoop is not an RDBMS or hardware. Hadoop is a software or which is a application framework that has been designed to overcome the issues with the big data. And the big data is nothing but it's just a definition, or it's not even a software. And sometimes we call the big data as a bunch of the softwares. Big data is a bunch of the softwares which are like Hadoop, Hive, HBase, Pig. So all these softwares which come under the Hadoop ecosystem, all this bunch of the softwares together, they call it as a Hadoop. And big data, sorry, all these bunch of softwares, they together they call as a big data. And Hadoop is one of the part of these big data solutions. So in the earlier days, so in the initial days where the Hadoop is evolving, so during those days, people call these big data and Hadoop, they are simultaneously equivalent. So suppose if I say Hadoop, that is equivalent to big data, because in those during this only Hadoop is a solution that has been designed to overcome the issues with the big data. But nowadays we have so many tools that are come under Hadoop ecosystem. Like we have come up, we have been designed like Hive, Peak, Scala, Spark. So we have been designed so many tools, and all these tools, they are part of the Hadoop ecosystems, and now they are part of the big data. And if I say now today I'm working on a big data, that doesn't mean that I'm working on a Hadoop. I'm working on Hadoop ecosystem tools like a Hive, Peak, Spark, Storm, Kafka, all these tools. So I need to mention all these tools in my resume that I'm working on. I'm part of this Hadoop ecosystem. And so these are the different admin roles and responsibilities. So which we need to, so which we need to uncover in the. One second. So these are the different Hadoop roles and Hadoop admin roles and responsibilities. So as a Hadoop admin, you need to design the capacity of the Hadoop cluster, and you need to design the capacity, and you need to plan the capacity. And so you need to set up the cluster setup. And so if there are any upgradations of the Hadoop cluster, you need to take care of the upgradations, and you need to do the troubleshooting of the failed jobs, or if any of the job is long running, you need to troubleshoot, and you need to perform the performance tuning. So you need to enable the performance tuning to your Hadoop cluster and your MapReduce jobs or your any Spark jobs. And you need to make sure that there is an automation placed. Suppose like suppose one of the data node failed. So you should not wait until somebody intimates you that the data node is failed. So why didn't you look into this issue so far? So or my job is facing some issues because of this issue. So you should not get intimated. So you should get intimated by yourself by writing some kind of automation scripts. And to make sure that suppose if the data node gets failed, you should get an email alert automatically. So that kind of automation you should place by yourself. And security. So nowadays, keeping the security for Hadoop cluster is one of the important tasks. So almost every client is looking for this kind of security tools. So basically, there are three major important security tools. One is the Kerberos, and another one is the Apache Ranger, and one more thing is Apache Knox. So these are the three different security tools. So that nowadays almost all major clients are looking for this. And so as a Hadoop admin, you also require to have some kind of development knowledge, and you would require to give some development support very often to the people. And so you also need to take care of some Linux activities and other network activities. So basically, these are very often that you would face these scenarios, but it's almost like we may see only like 3 to 5% these Linux activities or some other network activities, and so some other like activities like KT and all these are activities. So basically, the main important roles and responsibilities of the Hadoop is, so you need to design suppose if a new project arrives, so your architect comes to you and asks you to set up the Hadoop cluster. So so the first primary requirement is you need to design the Hadoop cluster setup. So how many number of nodes that I require? So what kind of distribution that I need to set up? So is it a Hortonworks distribution or Cloudera distribution? And and you need to know like, so what is the amount of the data that is arriving in the amount of the data that is arriving at the first time. So for the first time, suppose I'm keeping some 100 GB of the data or 1 TB of the data, 2 TB of the data, and so how long do I need to keep the data? And so what is the frequency of the incoming data in future that is coming? So like suppose daily I'm storing how much data? So I'm keeping some 5 GB of the data or 10 GB of the data into my Hadoop cluster. And also you need to make sure that, so what is the replication factor that I should keep? So is the data critical or not? Suppose if the data is critical, so I can keep that replication factor for that particular data as a 3 or 4. And suppose if I'm keeping some non-critical data just for temporary purpose, I can go with some less replication factor, something like 1 or 2. So something like that. So you need to design the Hadoop cluster capacity in such a way that, so you should set up the Hadoop cluster with minimal requirements and minimal what is that I can say, like minimal configurations. And you should not ask the client for the maximum configurations. So something like, suppose if my data capacity is something like, and if I want to keep some 1 TB of the data, and so you should design the Hadoop cluster so that you can keep the Hadoop cluster within 3 TB of the storage capacity, and you should not go beyond 4 TB or 5 TB. So that is how Hadoop admin should create the Hadoop cluster, and he should design the Hadoop cluster with minimal configuration value. And so once the capacities are designed, or once the Hadoop cluster capacity is configured, and then you should implement the Hadoop cluster. So here you can go with either Hortonworks distribution or Cloudera distribution. Suppose if your client has some kind of tie-up or partnership, or if he has bought any kind of license from the Cloudera Hortonworks, then you can go with either Cloudera Hortonworks based on the client's requirement. And once you set up the cluster setup, then you need to troubleshoot the issues. So once you've done the Hadoop cluster setup, so your end users or your developers or your end users, they run jobs on top of your Hadoop cluster. So while running the jobs, they always face some issues. So whenever they intimate you so about this issue, then you need to troubleshoot the issues, and also you need to place a solution so that the same issue that should not get repeated in future to the same user. The same issue that should not get repeated to the same user in future. So you should implement that kind of solution to the user. So this is one of the responsibilities of the Hadoop administrator. So once all these setups are done, you need to make sure that security is in place to your Hadoop cluster. So you can enable the securities, like you can enable the Kerberos, which is a ticket granting system. And after that, you can enable the Ranger. Like suppose I have some 10 Hive tables. So I can give access to different users on the different tables. Like suppose if there are some prod tables and there are some dev tables. So I can make sure that only these are the dev tables. They should be accessible by only to the development people, and these dev tables should not be accessible by some other users like UAT people or some other test people or some other end users. If there are some tables related to the analytics people, they should be accessible by analytics people. And also I can give column level access. So suppose on one of the columns I have the credit card information. So if nobody should see the credit card information. So I can restrict in such a way that okay, so the credit card column, that should be disabled to all the people. So I can restrict this kind of ACLs. We call them as the ACLs, and we can create this kind of ACLs using the Ranger tool. And also I can enable the perimeter security. Suppose I'm using some 10 node Hadoop cluster or 100 node Hadoop cluster. So my requirement is like there is some user who is not part of my company or who is not part of the Hadoop cluster team. He wants to access my Hadoop cluster, but he should not get exposed with all the services in my Hadoop cluster. He should not see where my Hadoop name node is running. He should not see where my Hadoop resource manager is running. So he should never know what kind of information, and should never know my Hadoop architecture, but he should be able to access my Hadoop. So that is one of the requirements. So nowadays people are coming up with using the Knox tool, Apache Knox tool, we can provide that requirement. So we can clear the requirement. So here Apache Knox is a tool that provides a perimeter security. So basically it provides a kind of gateway. We can call it, it is similar to kind of HA proxy. So here it acts kind of the proxy to our Hadoop cluster. So whatever the inputs that are coming from the end users or some other users which are not part of the Hadoop cluster, so the requests, they come from this Knox gateway URL and they access to the Hadoop cluster. So using this Knox tool, users at any cost, they cannot see our Hadoop cluster. They don't know what is my name node and what is my resource manager and what kind of data that I'm keeping in my Hadoop cluster. So these all come under, so Kerberos, Ranger, Knox, all these come under the security. Suppose once the security is implemented, so you need to make sure that automation is in place. So automation in the sense, like suppose, as I said, like so suppose if one of the nodes suppose one of the nodes goes down, so you need to make sure that, so somebody should not intimate you. So this node is going down. So why didn't you look into this issue? So you should always keep kind of monitors, or you should always keep kind of any scripts, such as scripts, Python scripts, to make sure that you get notified. So once the node is goes down, or suppose one of the process is not running, suppose if the name node process is not running, so you should not get intimated by others. So you should write a shell script or some other scripts to make sure that you get alert. But anyhow, using the, like in the Hortonworks we have Ambari tool, right? And in the Cloudera we have the Cloudera manager. So using these tools we can configure the alert, but they are restricted to some services only. Suppose basically these alerts are restricted to the Hadoop services, but on Linux boxes, if any other service but is not related to the Hadoop, and if the particular services goes down, but that these kind of alerts we do not get from the Ambari or Cloudera manager. So for that again you need to write the shell script. And very often you need to give kind of any development support. You need to give that development support. In some cases on the production clusters we face some we in general get some of the scenarios like where the development people, they don't have the access to create any table or to alter the tables. So in generally only the prod support people, the application support people, they have the access on these production systems. And where in such scenarios where the people from the development people from the development team, they ask you to create the table or alter the table, so you should be able to do that. And also, so as Hadoop is completely running on the Linux, so you should get familiar with the Linux commands and all the Linux servers servers and services. And also as a Hadoop is completely evolved so completely dependent on the network. So you should be aware of the some basic network concepts and network ideas, and you should not be aware of the like kind of creating the VLANs and operating the network switches, routers. You are not required to keep that kind of information, but you should have some kind of network terminology and network concepts and network commands. So basically, these are the different Hadoop admin roles and responsibilities that in general you come across during your so if you are working as Hadoop admin, so basically these are the common Hadoop and roles and responsibilities. So any one of you can ask me if you need help. Okay. So during this course, I will be covering all these topics. In the module 1, I'm covering this big data and Hadoop, but I'm not covering this one because I hope everybody is aware of the big data and Hadoop. And the module 2, I will cover this Hadoop components, understanding components and some basic program and Hadoop versions, understanding versions, Hadoop modes, configuration files, and how to install Hadoop and a single mode installation. So basically, in order to set up the Hadoop, so we have three ways. One is the local mode, and another one is a single Hadoop mode, and another one is a fully distributed Hadoop mode. In the single Hadoop mode, we call it as a pseudo distributed. Local mode in the sense where we don't install Hadoop, but we can still run our Hadoop jobs. Just what we do is that we import all our Hadoop jobs into the Eclipse, and we will run the MapReduce programs. So here we have restriction. So the MapReduce job will not get distributed across all the machines. It will run only on the machine where we have imported the Hadoop jobs into the Eclipse. And pseudo distributed or single mode Hadoop installation is we install Hadoop on one machine and we can run the Hadoop commands. We can run Hadoop jobs. Again, here the restriction is we can run Hadoop jobs only on that machine. They will not get distributed. And the third one is fully distributed. So we install Hadoop on multiple machines and we club together and we form Hadoop cluster, and we can run Hadoop jobs and we can store the Hadoop data. Again here, so the data will get distributed, and all my Hadoop MapReduce jobs, they will also get distributed across multiple nodes of the Hadoop cluster. So these are the three different modes. So I will show you how to set up the single mode or pseudo distributed mode. And I will once after installing this Hadoop in a single mode, I will show you how to set up a Hadoop cluster. So to set up Hadoop cluster, I will show you two ways. One is a manual setup and another one is a Hadoop cluster setup using the Hortonworks. In the manual setup, I take the Cloudera RPMs and I will show you each configuration file, and I will show you like how to set up the Hadoop cluster manually. So in a real-time environment, you will not face this situation. You will not come across this situation to set up the Hadoop cluster manually. Like suppose manually in the sense like suppose if I have some 10 nodes and ask you to set up the Hadoop cluster. So in the manual way, I need to install Hadoop in all the machines, and I need to manually edit the configuration files, and I need to manually set up the sorry. I need to manually edit the configuration files on all the machines, and I need to manually set up the Hadoop cluster. So, but in real time environments, you don't come across this situation. In real time, you see that also the situation that you face is like you need to set up the Hadoop cluster using either Hortonworks or Cloudera. So here there is no manual way. You just install. So just for Hortonworks, you just install Ambari server on one of the machines, and from the Ambari UI, you will set up the Hadoop cluster. So that is the kind of automated way. In real time scenarios, people do go with either Hortonworks Ambari or Cloudera Manager. But you should know how to set up Hadoop cluster using manual, because you should know what happens in the background. And in the next module, I will uncover all these Hadoop ecosystem components: Pix, Fujifilm, Zookeeper, HBase, and etc. And so I will just uncover all these components and I will show you how to install and how to configure them. And I will also show you how to do the performance tuning by using these various tools. And then I will show you like Hadoop cluster setup. So using the both ways, one is the manual way and using the Hadoop distribution, that is autonomous on that. And then I will show you how to set up the Hadoop high availability. So in Hadoop we have two versions, right? One is the Hadoop 1 and another one is the Hadoop 2. In the Hadoop 2 we have the high availability concepts. One is for the name node and another one is for the AN resource manager. So I will show you, what is meant by high availability, how to set up this high availability and how to test the high availability. So suppose if one of the Hadoop name node is down, and I will show you like how the requests are routing to the standby name node or another name node. And then I will show you like how to performance tuning and security. So how do you enable the performance tuning to your Hadoop cluster and map reduce jobs? So as completely Hadoop is developed on the Java, so you should be well aware of the heap and garbage collections. So you should know what are the different components involved in the heap, and you should know what are the different so when will these garbage collections occur and what is meant by garbage collection. So I will uncover all these concepts in a Hadoop performance tuning part and security part, and then so I will discuss about the security, and then I will show you how to implement the Kerberos, Ranger, and Knox, and I will show you how to do troubleshooting of the failed jobs. Suppose if any of the job is long running, or if any of the job is gets failed, so how do you troubleshoot? So basically, there are so many issues. There are so many scenarios where a job gets failed. So the common scenario is like map out of memory error. So where your memory is not sufficient to run the map task or reducer task, or where the memory is not sufficient to run your Hadoop and container. And so and some of the scenarios is some kind of security related. So suppose if you have given some access to a particular folder on HDFS and that access is limiting the user to create the folder, that access is limiting the user to create some folder, to modify some contents in the folder. So I will show this kind of scenarios and in troubleshooting the issues of the particular jobs. And also I will show you how do you design the Hadoop cluster and how do you set up the Hadoop cluster, how we will design the Hadoop cluster, and how do you create the cluster capacity requirements and cluster capacity planning. And in the module 8, I will cover about these tools. One is the ELK, that is Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. Okay. So nowadays, clients are asking for these kind of requirement. Like, so Hadoop or your application, suppose if you are running some Java related application and that application is creating huge amounts of the log files. My requirement is to see what the information in log files. I don't want to process the log files. Here I don't want to process the log files, but I want to see the information inside the log files. Suppose in the log files, my keyword is error. My keyword is error. So I want to search the keyword, how many times that the particular keyword called error has arrived in the last day or in the last week or in the last month. So I want to just search it. So I can search it using the grep command. But suppose if I have some these kind of log files, suppose if I have some around 100 log files, so it's not possible using the grep, right? So here we have some other tool called ELK, which enables the log monitoring or data monitoring. So I can see what is inside my data. I can see what is inside my data. So in the ELK, we have something called a Logstash. Using the Logstash, we can write the growth patterns to identify what are the different fields involved in my log files. We will discuss about this ELK, which is ELK is a kind of three tools, combination of three tools: Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. So in the Logstash, it pulls the log file. It pulls the log files into the Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is a kind of the Solar. So I hope everybody is aware of Solar, right? Which is it's a kind of search engine. So Elasticsearch is similar to the Solr. It stores or it indexes the data which is being pulled from the Logstash. Using the Kibana, I can visualize the data in the Elasticsearch. I can just create the graphs, chart, bots. So I can create all this. It's a kind of visualization tool, and it's a ELK is a combination of these three tools. We will discuss about this ELK in that module, and I will discuss about this Ansible. So nowadays clients are asking for the deployment automations, CI/CD. All of you aware of the DevOps, right? So in the DevOps, we have the concept of the CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment or continuous development. Suppose uh, my requirement is to launch EC2 instance, AWS EC2 instance, but I don't want to launch it manually. Suppose whenever I have committed code in the Git repository, so I am using the Git. So I have committed the code and I have pushed my code to the Git repository. So whenever I push the code to the Git repository, automatically one job has to launch. That job has to take care of creating the AWS EC2 instance and then installing some services on top of the AWS instance. So like suppose if my requirement is to set up the Apache web server, but I don't want to do it manually. I have pushed my code into the Git server. So when I push the code into the Git server, so there has to be a Jenkins job. So I hope you are aware of, some of you are aware of the Jenkins, right? Which performs a CI/CD task. So Jenkins will get integrated with like Git. So once the Git code is pushed, so Jenkins, it will launch, it will run the Ansible script. So what is there in that Ansible script is that just it will launch AWS EC2 instance box. In that EC2 instance, it will install the Apache web server and it will provision the Apache web server automatically. Here you see all of these tasks, they are being performed automatically, and here there is no manual intervention. So all these come under the CI/CD part. So I will discuss about this Ansible, and then after that I will show you that what are the trendings in big data. Here I haven't shown you the Apache Spark, so I will also show you that Apache Spark as well. I will also discuss about the Apache Spark as well. So basically, these are the different topics that I will cover throughout this course. So just let me know if you have any doubt. So if you don't have any doubts, then we will proceed to the HDFS part. Let me know if you have any doubts or any questions. So is everybody clear? Okay. So I hope everybody is clear. So I will start with HDFS architecture. So we know, right, in the Hadoop we have two components. So basically Hadoop is it's a framework that has been designed to solve the issues from the big data. So in Hadoop, basically Hadoop is a framework so that enables a distributed processing and distributed storage. Here the keyword is distributed. So it enables distributed processing and distributed storage. So basically what is the difference between Hadoop and an RDBMS? Here we have two concepts. One is a vertical scaling and another one is a horizontal scaling. For one example, I'm using my MySQL server, that is an RDBMS server. So MySQL server has the capacity to keep 1 TB of the data, but my requirement is to keep 2 TB of the data inside the MySQL server. So it's not possible, right? My input data is 2 TB, but my MySQL server capacity is 1 TB. So what I do is that I stop the MySQL server and I put one more 1 TB hard disk inside my MySQL server. Now my MySQL server capacity is 2 TB. now I can put this 2 TB of the data into the MySQL server. Suppose again my requirement is now I want to keep 2 more TB data into the MySQL server. Again, I stop the MySQL, again insert the 2 TB hard disk. Now my storage capacity becomes 4 TB. Now I can keep the again 2 TB of the data inside. Here you see I am keeping the MySQL server down. So there is a downtime, and it's practically impossible to keep infinite of the data in a single server, or it's practically impossible to keep petabytes of the data inside a single MySQL server. And this kind of scaling, we call it as a vertical scaling. So in the vertical scaling is, we are vertically adding the bunch of the hard disk onto a single server. And so, but big data, so for the big data, so for the huge volumes of the data, this is one of the issues that we are facing with the RDBMS servers, both for the storage and for the processing. Because for the storage, it's practically impossible to keep petabytes of the data into a single machine. And for the processing, it's practically impossible to process these volumes of the data inside a single machine. And also, the volumes of the data that is being generated, they are not restricted to the structured data only, because RDBMS, they can handle only structured data, but we are seeing huge volumes of the data mainly from the unstructured data and as well as the semi-structured data. So semi-structured data is a just for examples like JSON data or XML data or some kind of application log file. So these are the huge volumes of the data that is coming from. So our RDBMS servers, they are not capable of storing, or they are not capable of processing them. So we require a solution to process this. So here the Hadoop has been designed to store these huge volumes of the data and huge varieties of the data. Like I can store any kind of data, whether it is structured or semi-structured or unstructured. I can keep the data inside my Hadoop cluster, and I can process them as well. And in Hadoop, what I do is, suppose my input data is 2 TB and my Hadoop server capacity is 1 TB. So what I do is, I install Hadoop in one more machine and I club them together. Now my Hadoop cluster storage capacity becomes 2 TB and I can keep the data. So when I keep the data into my Hadoop cluster, the Hadoop data gets splitted into these two machines. So 1 TB will get stored into one machine and one more TB will get stored into the another machine. Now my total storage capacity becomes a 2 TB. And in case if I want to keep 2 more TB of the data, then what I do is that just install 2 more Hadoop machines and I club them together with the existing Hadoop cluster. Now my storage capacity becomes the 4 TB. So here you can ask me like, so here again we are installing a Hadoop on a single server, right? Again, it is a cost based solution. So basically here the cost is not matter. Here the cost doesn't matter because we are installing the Hadoop on a commodity hardware or kind of laptops or desktops. So the commodity hardware, that doesn't cost you much. So basically nowadays commodity hardware, they come with a kind of with the same cost as we are using the high-end hard disk. So suppose in the data center servers, we use the high-end hard disk. We in the data center servers, we use the high-end HDDs. So nowadays commodity softwares, they come with the same cost as of the HDDs that we use in the data centers. So that is the one of the advantages with the Hadoop software, because the Hadoop has been, we can install the Hadoop in commodity software, commodity hardware, and we can form the Hadoop cluster. And in the Hadoop, we have two components. One is the HDFS and another one is the MapReduce. So HDFS is a Hadoop distributed file system, which is a storage unit, and MapReduce is a processing unit. And we will discuss about the MapReduce and AN architecture on tomorrow. And today we will discuss about the HDFS. In the HDFS, we have these components: name node, data node, secondary name node, FS image, edit log, block size, and replication factor. In a HDFS, mainly we have three daemons or three services: name node, data node, and secondary name node. Name node is a master daemon, data nodes are the slave daemons, and secondary name node is a master daemon, and which we can treat as a backup to the name node, but actually it's not a backup to the name node. So before going further, we should discuss about the block size and replication factor. In Hadoop, we have two versions. One is the Hadoop 1 and Hadoop 2. And nowadays, almost 99% clients are using the Hadoop 2 version. In Hadoop 2 version, we have the concept of the block size, and the default block size is 128 MB. So block size is nothing but your data gets splitted, or your data gets cut into multiple pieces. Suppose if my input data is 1 GB and my block size is 128 MB. So your input data is cut into the 8 blocks, that is 1 GB divided by 128 MB, that is equal to the 8 blocks, and all these 8 blocks, they get scattered across multiple data nodes. So in the Hadoop, your original data gets stored into the data node. In Hadoop, your original data gets stored into the data nodes, and your Hadoop data gets stored in the data nodes in the form of the HDFS block. Block is nothing but your part of the data, or you are just split of the data. If your input file size is just 1 GB and your block size is 128 MB, and your input data gets split across multiple data nodes while loading the data. Suppose you executed command to read the file. So what happens in the background is all the Hadoop blocks of a particular file, or all the data blocks for a particular file, they again merge together or clubbed together and display, and it will show you as a single file. So while storing the data, your input file gets split across multiple data nodes in the form of the HDFS block, and while reading the file, all these HDFS blocks, they again merge together or clubbed together, and it will display the client as a single file. And in Hadoop 2, the default block size is 128 MB. And here we have the concept of the replication factor. So basically, Hadoop has been designed to enable the fault tolerance. Fault tolerance in the sense, if I am storing suppose 1 GB of the file in the Hadoop with the replication factor 3, at the end I am storing 3 GB of the data. With the replication factor 3, at the end I am storing 3 GB of the data in my Hadoop cluster. If I enable the replication, so what the advantage is that even if one of the data goes down, suppose in one of the data nodes, one of the blocks, or if one of the data nodes completely goes down, I still can enable the data. I still can see the data from the other data nodes. So that is the advantage with the replication. So like as we are keeping the same copies of the data in like suppose for 1 GB of a file and with the 128 MB as a block size, so I'm creating 8 blocks, and with the replication factor 3, at the end I'm keeping 8 into 3, 24 blocks inside my Hadoop cluster in the Hadoop data nodes. So all these 24 blocks, they scattered across multiple data nodes. Like suppose if we take block A, so for the out of the 8 blocks, and if we take first block as a block A, and which has a 3 replication blocks, 3 replications. So all this block A, it will get stored into the data node 1, data node 2, data node 3. If data node 1 goes down, I still can access the same block from the either data node 2 or data node 3. If the block B, it again scattered into the data node 4, 5, 6. If the data node 5, 6 both are the data node both, if the data node 5 and 6, so both are went down, I still can access the data block from data node 4. So suppose if all these 3 data nodes went down, data node 4, 5, 6, all these 3 data nodes went down. So can I access the data block or not? Can any one of you answer that? My block is stored in 3 data nodes, that is data node 4, 5 and 6. All these 3 data nodes went down. Can I access the data block? Yes, it's not possible to access the data block for that particular node. But in real-time environment or in production environment, it's highly impossible for all the data nodes to go down. It's highly impossible for all the data nodes to go down. So in generally in Hadoop environment, so in generally in production environment, your data is stored in the form of the Hadoop racks. So Hadoop rack is nothing but, sorry, it's not Hadoop rack, it's just a rack. So rack is nothing but, it's a cage. You can understand it's a kind of the almara. So you know, right, how almara looks like, and it's a kind of it's a similar to the almara. So what I do is that I keep bunch of the servers in a single rack or single almara, and another bunch of the servers in another rack, and again another bunch of servers in another rack. So suppose your data node. So out of the 3 data nodes, data node 1 is sitting rack 1, and data node 2 and 3 sitting on the rack 2. And while storing the blocks, so block A will store in the rack 1, and the rest of the 2 replicas, it will store in data node 2 and data node 3, which are sitting on the rack 2. So the first copy is sitting on the rack 1, and the 2 and 3, the second and third replicas of the block are sitting on the rack 2. Suppose if the rack 2 goes down, I still can access the data from the rack 1. If the rack 1 goes down, I still can access the data from rack 2, either from the data node 2 or data node 3, which are sitting on the rack 2. Suppose if both the racks are went down, I cannot access the data node block. But that is a highly impossible solution in a real-time or production environment. Because if both the racks went down means, so there is an outage issue on the data center environment. So in such scenarios, that is not the responsibility of the Hadoop administrator, because as this, that is not a responsibility of the Hadoop administrator, as these are being taken care by the network team or operation center team. And that is all about the block size and the replication factor.
Madhu, I have one question. In what cases Hadoop system will, whenever we lose one of the copy, in what case system will create an other new replica?
Okay. So like suppose after the 3 blocks, one of the blocks is not accessible. One of the blocks is not accessible means the data node which has that particular block is not accessible by the name node. So basically all these data nodes, they send heartbeats to the name node periodically. I think for every 3 seconds they send the heartbeats to the name node. So if a block is not accessible means the particular data node is not sending heartbeat to the name node. So whenever name node is identified that the particular data node is not sending heartbeat for a configurable period of time, then the name node, it automatically creates a under replicated block on another new name node, or another name node, sorry, on another data node which has been set to free. Like suppose in my Hadoop cluster I have 4 data nodes. So out of the 4 data nodes, one of the data node is not accessible. So it identifies that, so whatever the blocks in that particular data node, it identifies those blocks because name node has already kept the information about the rest of the blocks, right? And so suppose for a block with the replication factor 3, on the data node 3, if the data node 3 goes down and still the name node has the information about the same copies of the block either on data node 2 or data node 1. So using that information, so name node tries to create the replicas of the same blocks on data node 4. So at the end, it makes sure that there are no blocks are over replicated or under replicated. Is that clear?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but suppose if the name node doesn't do that. So if the name node doesn't create the under replicator, sorry, if the name node doesn't create the replicas of the blocks automatically, still we can create the replicas of the blocks using the HDFS balancer command. So we have command called HDFS balancer, which will balance the data across our Hadoop cluster. That is again manual. But in 99% cases, Hadoop name node automatically clears the under replicated blocks. It automatically clears the under replicated blocks. And in Hadoop, we have 2 files. One is fs image and edit log. So basically, whenever you set up the Hadoop, so whenever you install the name node for the first time, so one file will be created. So that file we call it as a fs image, that file will load the, so basically this file will load it into the memory. What this FS image file contains? It contains the information about the data nodes, data node blocks, files, folders. So basically this FS image file contains all the namespace information of your Hadoop cluster. So it contains all the namespace information of your Hadoop cluster. So it contains the information, sorry, just 1 minute. So it contains the information about your, what is that? Data nodes, data node blocks, and files in the data node, blocks in the data node, and blocks to files mapping. All this information is in the FS image file, and this FS image file is loaded into the name node RAM. This FS image file is loaded into the name node RAM. So this FS image file, we call it as this FS image file, basically this contains the information about the namespace. The namespace is nothing but all the information inside the Hadoop cluster. So this FS image file is loaded into the RAM, and once the FS image file is loaded into the name node RAM, after that I have made some transactions. The transactions in the sense, suppose I kept some file into the Hadoop, or I deleted some file into the Hadoop. This information will not be logged into the FS image. This information will be logged into the edit log. There is a file called edit log. So this information will be logged into the edit log file. So all the transaction information from the last restart of the Hadoop name node service will be logged into the edit log file. Again, this edit log file is also kept into the name node RAM. So suppose yesterday I restarted my name node. So after restarting my name node service, so FS image file is created, and this FS image file is loaded into the RAM. So once FS image file is loaded into the RAM, so from yesterday to today, I have made some transactions inside my Hadoop cluster. So the transactions in the sense, I have created some files in the HDFS, or I have deleted some files in HDFS, like that. So all these transactions information, they are logged into the edit log file. So on today, I restarted again my Hadoop service. Today, again I have restarted my Hadoop name node service. So after restarting my name node service, or during the boot up of this name node service, this FS image file and edit log, so both are get merged together, and it creates a new FS image file again. So this FS image file and edit log, so both these files are merged together, and new FS image file is created. And the new FS image file, it contains the information about the old FS image plus all the transaction information that are logged into the edit log. The new FS image contains the old FS image plus that all the transaction information inside the edit log. This the new FS image file again is loaded into the name node RAM, and the edit log information gets flushed. Suppose, so now if you have made any transactions, suppose if you make any transactions again inside your Hadoop cluster, you created some files, you deleted the files, again your edit log gets filled up with all these transactions. So again, if you restart the name node service, again FS image file plus edit log, that gets merged together, and the new FS image file created, and it will load into the memory. So you see, every time you restart the service, then only this FS image file and edit log information is getting merged together. Suppose here one of the scenarios, if you face one of the scenarios is like yesterday you restarted the name node service, FS image file is created, loaded into the memory, and at that time only you have taken the backup of this FS image. And today, so from yesterday to today, if you have made some transactions inside your Hadoop cluster, today 10:40, your name node machine crashed down. So suppose if our name node is crashed down at 10:40, and all the information from yesterday to until 10:40 today, that information resides in the edit log file, and that information is not updated in the FS image because your name node has been restarted on the yesterday itself, but it's not restarted on today where the name node is crashed down. So in such scenarios, your name node has the, so in such scenarios where your name node has the your name node has no updated information of your Hadoop cluster information. That is, your name node has no updated information about the data nodes or data node blocks that are residing in the data node, the files and files to block mappings. So your name node has no updated information about all these blocks and files. Then I can say that your Hadoop cluster has under replicator blocks, or your Hadoop cluster is corrupted. So do you understand what I'm saying? Like suppose on yesterday you have restarted your Hadoop name node service, and on today 240 your Hadoop name node service machine is down, and from yesterday to today 1040 you have made some transactions. All these transformations sorry, so all these transactions, they are logged into the edit log file, and this edit log file, as it is stored into the name node RAM and it is not merged with the FS image, if your name node crashes down at 1040, all this information that is reside in the edit log file, it will get wiped out. So that means your name node has no updated information about the FS image, or it has no updated information about the blocks, files, blocks to files mappings. So these are the one of the scenarios where you would face if you don't have configured the secondary name node. The purpose of the secondary name node is to keep the checkpointing. So to perform the checkpointing. So checkpointing in the sense, so for every configurable period of time, by default it is 1 hour. So by default it is 1 hour. So for every 1 hour, secondary name node, it copies the FS image and edit log file from the name node, and it clubs together and it merges the FS image and edit log file and creates a new FS image, and this new FS image file, it will be pushed to the name node. So like suppose for every 1 hour, like just for example, it has performed the checkpointing operation at 10 o'clock, and again at 11 o'clock it takes a FS image from the name node, and it takes edit log information from the name node, and at 11 o'clock it performs a checkpointing. So checkpointing means it merges the FS image and edit log, and again it pushes the latest updated FS image file into the name node, and this latest updated FS image file will be loaded into the name node RAM. And if you have taken the backup of this FS image at 11 o'clock, you have the updated information of the your Hadoop cluster at 11 o'clock. So that is the primary requirement of the secondary name node. And the here you see, suppose if the name node goes down, here you can point the request to the secondary name node. But here the Hadoop doesn't do it manually. Sorry, Hadoop doesn't do it automatically. You have to manually point the request to the secondary name node. But again, here we have one more disadvantage. As we say, like for every configurable period of time, like suppose take every 1 hour. So it has done the checkpointing operation at 10 o'clock, and the next and again it will perform the checkpointing operation at 11 o'clock. So what happens if your name node goes down at 10:40? So from 10 to 10:40 you have made some transactions inside your Hadoop cluster. All these transactions are residing in your edit log file, and you have lost your edit log file as because your name node went down at 10:40. So your secondary name node, it can't perform the checkpointing operation at 11 o'clock because your edit log file is corrupted as the name node crashed down at 10:40, or your secondary name node has no updated information about the blocks or files that are stored into your Hadoop cluster, because as you lost the edit log file information at 10:40. So in such scenarios, what we do is we go with the upgrading to our Hadoop cluster from Hadoop 1 version to the Hadoop 2 version. In the Hadoop 2 version, we have the concept of the high availability. So high availability in the sense, I set up 2 name nodes, and 2 name nodes are running at any point of time. Suppose if one of the name nodes goes down, users can automatically route the request to the standby name. So out of the two name nodes, one name node is active and another name node is a standby. If the active name node goes down, user request, they automatically get diverted to the standby name node. Suppose if the active name node gets down, so the requests are diverted to the standby. Suppose if the standby name node goes down, so meanwhile the active would have been already up. So again the request they goes to the active name node, the previous active name node. So like that. So here you can see there is a load balancing activity has been performed in the Hadoop 2 architecture with the high availability of the name node. So is that clear so far? Please let me know if you have any doubts with all these concepts. Samba, Venkat, Ravi, is that clear so far?
Yeah, clear, Madhu.
So all of you understand what is the edit log FS image? Checkpointing?
Yes, Madhu.
Okay. So basically this is how HDFS architecture looks like. Here you see, suppose when our client puts some request, so the request goes to the name node metadata, because in the name node metadata here it keeps the information of all the files, blocks and files to block mappings, and a name node identifies the list of the data nodes wherever the file blocks residing. So it will just ask the client to go to the corresponding data node and read the blocks from the each data node. Again, for writing, I will show it in the next slide. So as explained, right? So you understand the racks, right? So suppose if you want to keep some blocks. So here you see my block is A, and I have data node 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we have 3 racks: rack 1, rack 5, and rack 9. So here you see block A. Block A is sitting on the rack 1, and the rest of the 2 replicas, they are sitting on the rack 5. Suppose if the rack 5 completely goes down, I can still access the data from the rack 1. If the rack 1 goes down, I still can access the data blocks from the rack 5. Suppose if both the rack 1 and rack 5 goes down, I cannot access the data block. So that is a highly impossible scenario in the real-time environment. So here you see, as I explained, FS image file and edit log transaction, all these merged together during the checkpointing operation, and the new FS image file is created and it will be loaded into the name node RAM. And in your Hadoop, by default, each block occupies 150 bytes of the memory. So by default, each block occupies 150 bytes of the memory. So suppose if you are keeping 1 GB of the file into the Hadoop, so 1 GB means, and your HDFS block size is 128 MB. So that means you are creating 8 blocks, right? So 1 GB divided by 128 MB equal to 8 blocks. And each block occupies 150 bytes. That means at the end you are storing 8 into 150 bytes of the memory in your Hadoop name node RAM. So for 1 GB file occupies 8 into 150 bytes of the RAM in your Hadoop name node memory. So based on that, you can calculate the amount of the memory that is required for the name node machine. So based on that, you can calculate the amount of the memory required for name node machine while designing the Hadoop cluster. Okay. So here you can see HDFS read operation. So what happens when you want to read some data from the HDFS? Here you see this is the HDFS client. So I executed some command like Hadoop fs-cat and so on so file. So if I execute this command, so first here you see the connection, it creates an open connection to the distributed file system. So distributed file system is nothing but HDFS. So again, so once if it is opens the connection, then the DFS will contact the name node and asking for the block locations of the corresponding file. So while it is asking for the block locations for the corresponding file, name node performs few validations. it performs a validation like whether the requesting file is available in the name node or not. So whether the requesting file is stored into the Hadoop or not. If the file is stored in, so if the file is available in the Hadoop cluster, and then the name node verifies whether the user who is performing this operation has the read access to read the file or not. It validates a user whether the user has the access to read the file or not. So upon validating these two checks, then only name node gives the list of the data nodes who can. So upon validating these two checks, then only the name node gives the list of the data node to read the file. So name node has performed these two checks, and it has retrieved the data nodes, and it has retrieved the data nodes where the data blocks of the particular file exist. Suppose if my file size is 1 GB, so that means I have 8 blocks stored, right? So for 1 GB file, I have 8 blocks, and with my replication factor 3, I have 24 blocks. Okay, so let us take for the block A. So out of the 1 GB file, let us take for the block A. For the block A, I have 3 replications. So name node for every block, it gives the 3 data nodes. And so for the block A, it gives the list of the 3 data nodes. Block B, 3 data nodes, like that. So out of the last 8th block, it also gives the 3 data nodes. Okay. So for the first, just for the example, for the block A, it has retrieved the 3 data nodes. And the name node, it gives the information about the block A. It gives the information about the block A, and it gives the information about the 3 data nodes to the HDFS client. And the HDFS client, it directly contacts the data nodes. But instead of contacting to the 3 data nodes, it will contact to one of the data nodes which is nearest to the client. Here you see, out of the 3 data nodes, it will contact to the data node which is nearest to the client. Like suppose the client is sitting in India. So suppose it's me, Madhu. Madhu is sitting in India, and he has executed the command hadoop fs-cat and so on and so forth. And out of the 3 data nodes, one data node is sitting in India, and another data node is in US, and one more data node is in UK. So name node has given the 3 data nodes, and one data node is in India, and second data node is in US, third data node is UK. So as the client is sitting in India, and out of the 3 data nodes, one data node is also in India, the request goes to the proximity data node. The request goes to the proximity data node, that is to the nearest data node to the client, and that is in the India. So out of the 3 data node servers, the request goes to the India server. Suppose if the client is sitting in India, and out of the 3 data nodes, one is in US, another one is the UK, and another one is the China. So out of these 3 locations, the China is the proximity data node server to the client. So the request goes to the data node server. So here the read operations from the client, they always go to the nearest data node server from the client. You should remember that the request goes to the nearest data node servers from the client, not from the data node. So so generally people get confused to that the request goes to the nearest data node from the name node, not from the name node. The request go to the nearest data nodes from the client. So is that clear? The read operation, or any doubts? So is that clear, right? So all of you understand, right? How the name. Hello.
That's good.
Okay. Okay. So far we have seen the read operation in the Hadoop cluster. Now we will see how the write operations work in the Hadoop cluster. So I executed a command called hadoop fs-put and counts of file path. So if I put this command, so here you see, first HDFS client opens a create connection to the distributed file system, and the distributed file system again creates a create connection to the name node. So once it contacts to the name node identifies the file size. Suppose if my input file size is 1 GB, and the name node has already information about the data node's capacity. Like suppose my Hadoop cluster storage capacity is 500 MB, but my input size is 1 GB. As the name node has already information about the storage capacity of the data node, then it immediately it will immediately throw an error that uh, that error is, I just forgot I don't remember the error name, but it will just throw an error that out of the capacity error. So you can't place the 1 GB file into 500 MB Hadoop storage capacity. Okay, suppose here the validation has been passed. So your Hadoop cluster has a sufficient capacity to keep this 1 GB file. And then it performs one more validation, whether the user who is submitting this particular request has the right access to keep the Hadoop data in that particular folder in a HDFS. Suppose I want to keep this file in some HDFS folder like /user/Madhu. So it verifies whether the Madhu user has the right access to keep this in the HDFS folder user Madhu. Okay. So it has also validated the check, and client has been successfully passed the checks. So upon verifying these two checks, then the name node the name node allows the client to write the file into that particular file. And then once the checks are passed, then the HDFS client, it will open a write connection to the FS data output stream. FS data output stream is nothing but it's a Java streaming object which maintains the IO operation between the name node and data node. It maintains the IO operations between the name node and data node. So FS data output stream, it calculates the blocks for the input files. Like suppose my input file size is 1 GB. So it identifies, so it has to place 8 blocks in the 3 different data nodes. So that means at the end, it has to keep 24 blocks. So it takes a first block. So out of the 8 blocks, it takes the first block, and it will ask the name node for the 3 data nodes to keep the blocks in the data node. It will ask the name node for the 3 data nodes. So name node will give the list of the 3 data nodes, and out of the 3 data nodes, FS data output stream, here you see it writes a packet. So here, as the data is transferred over the network, so at the end your data will be transferred into the network packet, and your network packets will be distributed across the data nodes. Out of the three data nodes, it writes a data node, it writes a HDFS block into the one of the data nodes. One of the data nodes which is nearest to the client. Again here, the data node which is nearest to the client. So once the block is written into the one of the data node, and that data node will create the copy of the block, and it will be placed into the second data node. Here again, the second data node creates a copy of the block, and it will again place into the third data node. Here you see the replication among the data nodes, they are taken care by themselves. The replication of the block among the data nodes, they are taken care by themselves. Here FS data output stream or name node, it's not taking the responsibility of the creating the replications. Once a block is placed in the data node, and the data node is taking care of the replica, creating the replica and placing it into another data node, and the second data node, it will create the replica of the block, third replica, and it will place into the third data node. So once a block is completely replicated, that means once a block has been replicated with 3 times, then one ACK packet is generated. Just it's an acknowledgement. It's an acknowledgement packet is generated. This acknowledgement packet is generated, and it will be given to the FS data output stream. Here you see, suppose for 1 GB file I have 8 blocks, right? FS data output stream maintain 2 queues. One is a data queue, and another one is a ACK queue. So one is a data queue, and another one is a ACK queue. So data queue is nothing but FS data output stream to the data nodes, and ACK queue is or acknowledgement queue is data nodes to the FS data output stream. Okay, data queue is from FS data output stream to the or FS data output stream to the data node, and ACK queue is
data nodes to the FS data output stream. So the purpose of this acknowledgement queue is, so all this, whatever the data nodes that exist in the data queue, they will also exist in the ACK queue. Suppose it has been successfully copied 2 data nodes among these data nodes. It has been successfully copied 2 blocks out of the 8 blocks. It has been successfully copied 2 blocks in all the data nodes. While copying the third block, or while loading the third block into the data node, suppose what happens if data node goes down? Out of the 3 data nodes, one of the data node goes down while copying the third data node. So here what happens is that first it closes the pipeline of the data nodes. First it closes the pipelines of the data nodes, and it will flush whatever the data blocks reside in the data queue. So in the data queue we have 6 more data blocks, right? So we have already copied 2 data blocks into the all 3 data nodes, and we have still 6 more data blocks left in the data key queue. So all these data blocks are flushed from the data key queue, and ACK queue, it will again copy the blocks from the ACK queue to the data queue. So in the ACK queue we have the 6 blocks. So why it copies the data blocks from the ACK queue to the data queue is that for the success we have successfully copied 2 blocks, right? So successfully copied means we have received the acknowledgement about the 2 blocks from the data node. So that means the name node has updated information about the 2 blocks. The name node has updated information about the 2 blocks because they have been successfully copied across all the data nodes. We have 6 more blocks that are not yet copied successfully, and these 6 blocks will be placed into the data queue again. So once these are placed into the data queue, and then again the copying operation with the existing 2 data nodes will continue. So after the 3 data nodes, one of the data nodes went down, and the name node still the FS data output stream, it still performs the loading operation only in these 2 data nodes. So once the blocks are copied into these data nodes, here we see 6 blocks are under replicated, right? Or 8 blocks are under replicated as one of the data nodes went down. Then upon the copying of this data node, upon the copying of these blocks into the data nodes, then the name node identifies that, okay, so these 8 blocks are under replicated, then I have to make them replicated, and it identifies the one of the data nodes which is set to free. Then it will create the balancing of these data blocks across the new data node. In such a way the write operation works. So is that clear so far?
Yes.
Yeah. Samba, Ravi, is that clear? Is that understood? Do I need to explain again?
Yeah, Madhu, understood.
Okay. So as we discussed in a Hadoop one version, we have the issue with the name node and secondary name node, because secondary name node is a kind of a checkpointing name node, but it doesn't act like a backup. It doesn't act like a backup to the name node. So we have to manually point the request to the secondary name node. Suppose if the name node goes down at 10 o'clock and you are not in the office, and if that happens on the weekend, so you are not in the office, and you come on Monday, you identified that name node went down, and you say all the Hadoop jobs they went down, and your Hadoop cluster is not at all accessible during that particular due days, and it will become an escalation. So in order to avoid that, in Hadoop 2 version, there is an introduction of the one more data node, that is one more name node, that is 2 name nodes. One is active and another one is a standby. If the active goes down, standby will automatically becomes active. So meanwhile you can identify the issue, so why the active name node went down, and you can up the active name node again. So once the active name node is up again, suppose if the standby name node again it went down, it will automatically, the Hadoop will automatically route the request to the new active name node. So here you see the routing request, they automatically take care of by the Hadoop architecture itself. And while I'm explaining about the HDFS availability, I will explain the background architecture, how HDFS high availability works, and I will explain the quorum journal daemons and FSCK, and I will explain about all these daemons which are part of the HDFS. And also we can enable the high availability for the YAN as well. I will discuss about the YAN and the MapReduce in the tomorrow session. Okay. So please let me know if you have any doubts about the today's session. Is it clear for everyone about the today's session? And anyhow, I have recorded the session so far, and I will share the session to all of you. And please just drop me your mail IDs in the chat. So I will share that today's session video in the Google Drive. So you can ask me if you have any doubts about the today's session.
Yeah. As far as I don't have any questions, but I joined a bit late. I don't know how many sessions.
No. This is the
What
starting
it?
session. This is the today's. This is the starting session.
Okay. So how many days it is planned and
It's planned for 30 days.
30 days. Okay.
Yeah.
So when part of as we are working like this for admin related, right?
Yes.
The practical, the hands-on is the important one.
Yes.
So how is that?
So here actually I will show you like how to set up the Hadoop cluster. I will set up the Hadoop cluster as anyhow I'm recording the videos, right? So I mean you can you can play the video at any point of the time and you can see so how to set up the Hadoop cluster and all these things. So I will show you how to set up Hadoop cluster and I will practically show you like setting up the Hadoop cluster, setting up the Kerberos security and implementing the performance tunings and running the MapReduce jobs. Now all these I practically show you. And these are not like just a kind of presentations. Okay, you understand it? These are not kind of presentations, but I'll practically show you setting up the Hadoop clusters and enabling performance tuning, setting up security and all these things.
Okay. So you mean to say that you're going to give an instruction how to set up?
Not even instructions. I will also set up that.
Okay.
I will set up that and I record the. I mean, so you can see how I am setting up the Hadoop cluster. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. But anyhow, I'm recording the session as well, right? So if you have any doubts, you can play that session multiple times. And if you face any issues, and you can practice it later times. So if you face any issues, you can reach me at any point of time.
So when it's come to point of setup, like are we using this AWS or are
No.
we using
Here
Oracle
I'm
box or
Hadoop cluster on Oracle VirtualBox. So here my laptop RAM capacity is 16 GB. So I'm setting up a 3-node or 4-node Hadoop cluster in my laptop RAM.
when it comes like VirtualBox means it's not like a quick start, right? So you'll be doing install one after the other on that, right?
Yes. I'm installing one after one. I mean, it's just like in the real time how the Hadoop cluster looks like. I will set up the like that.
Yeah, okay. Because QuickBooks again, it's a headache.
No, it's not a Hadoop
right?
or QuickBooks. It's not like that.
Okay.
It's completely setting up the Hadoop cluster from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah. Samba, Ravi, any questions or doubts? Samba, Ravi, any doubts or questions?
No, Madhu.
Okay. Yeah, just all of you just ping your mail IDs here and I will share the content. Venkat. Venkat. Yeah, Venkat. In the starting session, somebody has joined with a user one name. Do you know who is that guy?
No, I don't.
Okay. So suppose in the group you see like suppose if any of them are interested, you just refer them and ask them to join. Okay.
Okay,
Sure. Yeah. Thank you all of you.
Okay. You from where you conditions in US and
Venkat, actually your voice is getting disconnected. So can you just ask me again?
Okay, so you're putting this timings at 9:30, right? 2 years timings. So
Ah.
you are staying in US or
No,
out
no,
of
I'm staying in
US?
India, Hyderabad.
Oh, okay, 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 fine.
And also just I request all of you to please make sure that you are available at 7 o'clock so that others will not wait for any one of you. Because from tomorrow onwards, at any point, at any cost, I will start the sessions from 7 a.m. But even though you are 5 minutes or 10 minutes late, again, you don't miss anything because as I'm recording the session and I will share you later, so you don't miss the session. I mean, even if you just 5 minutes later, you can still play the video and you can see that in the in the videos, whatever that you missed. But please try to make sure that you are available at 7 o'clock, 7 a.m.
Okay.
Okay, Mother.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Alam. Bye. వాళ్ళదే ఇంకా 2.x అంటే సపరేట్గా ఏం లేదు, అది హై అవైలబిలిటీ వచ్చినప్పుడు చెప్తాను. నాకు గొంతు పోతుందిరా బాబు. మరి రేపటి నుంచి నీళ్ళు పెట్టుకోవాలి.